I am late. Hey, Zombie Zambino, what's up? And today I'm gonna do a review on The Walking Dead Season 1. I've already finished watching Walking Dead Season 4 last year, but since Season 8 is coming to a close soon, why not do a review from the bottom? Season 7 and 8 had gone to shit, but Season 1 isn't bad at all. AMC and show producer Frank Darabont presented us a TV show adapted from a book about a zombie apocalypse. It's released in 2010 when both Mad Men and Breaking Bad were soaring in the TV industry, with a hell lot of Emmys and Golden Globes. So AMC decided to strike while the iron is hot in an attempt to create a more fictional and gruesome TV show, and I just realized that the air conditioning is on. Let me turn it off. One sec. And man, when it comes to brutality and violence, this show has it. Oh my gosh, with the walkers being cut in half, guts spilling out, ripping out, with walkers being stabbed in the eye, ripped apart and grinded. It's disgusting, but in a satisfying way that is not cringy. The pilot episode is titled Days Gone By, which is a sort of a pun title. And damn, this is a surprisingly one of the best TV pilots I've ever watched, up there with Breaking Bad and Lost Pilot. This episode starts with Rick and his buddy Shane as two police officers in Atlanta, Texas. I actually don't know where they were, except they were somewhere in southern USA. Anyway, in an accident from being a police officer, Rick got shot and was sent to hospital. When Rick woke up from the hospital bed, the entire hospital was empty. The whole town was dead silent, and so was the whole city. We see Rick slowly work his way from his hospital bed to the hospital hallway, down the stairs, to the streets, and walk back home. And the way we see Rick went through all these step by step really creates such an interesting and intriguing feel to it. And after Rick had reached his place, he realized that his wife Lori and his son Carl had left, and he was so worried about them. And then he stumbled upon two random survivors, Morgan and his son Dwayne. And that was truly a small gap of hope in the midst of a sea of dark clouds. And I love that hopeful feeling. So Morgan and Dwayne told Rick all about the walkers and how to fight them, and they departed at the end because Rick needed to find his wife and his son Lori and Carl. And that makes for some even more entertaining and suspenseful scenes, especially towards the end when Rick was cornered. He hid inside a tank and he found a radio thing, and suddenly someone spoke to him. Hey, dumbass. And that is another very, very hopeful moment that I love. The pilot episode is way more interesting and entertaining than I have anticipated. Not only does it set in a zombie apocalypse world, we are placed in Rick's point of view and we are able to rediscover the world bit by bit and slowly learn more and more about the world after the apocalypse, after the breakout. And that's why this feels so fascinating and interesting. It's brilliant. Episode 2, Guts, continues to deliver new characters, solid storylines, and entertaining scenes. Rick stumbled upon a group of survivors, including Glenn, Andrea, T-Dog, and Merle, and many more others. And Merle was being such an asshole, and he's such a threat, so Rick cuffed him up onto the building's rooftop where the survivors stayed in the building. And there's a scene where Rick has to get the keys, so he and Glenn had to wear walkers' guts around them to disguise themselves as walkers. And that's just one of the most memorable scenes involving Glenn ever. And at the end, things happened again, and the group of survivors had to leave the building and move to a new camp, and that makes for some intense action scenes also. Overall, it's a solid episode, and it's getting more and more exciting as the story expands and we learn more about the post-apocalyptic world. Moving on to episode 3, Tell It to the Frogs, where two groups of survivors emerge and everyone reunite. Rick, Andrea, Glenn, T-Dog, and the others found the Atlanta group, which is a bit larger. So Shane, Lori, and Carl reunited with Rick. Amy reunited with Andrea, and Morales reunited with his wife and daughter too. And new characters like Dale and Daryl were also introduced, and Daryl was also Merle's brother, Merle's younger brother. So that's a lot of information. And more drama happened as Shane started to get jealous of Rick because Shane had an affair with Lori, but now that Rick's back, Lori had to push Shane away, and that made Shane even more threatening and unpredictable. Also, Daryl and some others tried to find Merle, but Merle was nowhere to be seen or found, and that makes for an interesting ending. Over to episode 4, Vatos. Rick needed his bag of guns and his hat, so he and a bunch of others went back out to retrieve them. Then shit happened and Glenn was in trouble with a bunch of members of another survival group that are mostly consisted of Latinos and Hispanics. And after some negotiation, it ended up pretty peacefully, but the ending is totally another story. It's very sudden and disastrous. Lots of terrible things happened and people just freaked out. Some of them even died. Not the best ending, but it's still kinda surprising. There's also this weird storyline where a weird guy started digging holes in the ground and Shane tied him up to a tree because Shane thought he's dangerous. Overall, it's still a fairly enjoyable episode, but after all, it's not that groundbreaking. Then it's episode 5, Wildfire, which mainly deals with the tragic aftermath of the previous episode and trying to move on to something new, somewhere new, and continue to expand the storyline. First of all, the drama and the tension between Shane and Rick heats up, and I like that. I like that even more if only the tension would actually build up to something. And there's also a couple of really emotional scenes that deal with the deaths of a number of people, and we see people watching their own loved ones die and turn into walkers, then having to kill their loved ones, which is harsh and brutal, but it's sad, kind of harsh. And the group reaches a new place called CDC, Center of Disease Control. And at first it felt hopeless because nothing happened when the group of survivors arrived. They expected another group of people inside the facility, but at the end there is hope, and I think that's pretty satisfying. The final episode is TS-19, or Test Sample 19. The group of survivors finally had a safe place to stay and had good food to eat in CDC with a new character, Dr. Jenner. But soon, they realize that there's no cure for this whole walker thing and it's getting even more hopeless. So Dr. Jenner did something that put everyone in danger. But it's also really nice to see the new location. It's a breath of fresh air. And really, damn, it must be nice for the cast and crew to finally getting to shoot indoors with air conditioning on. But that's just my assumption. And the ending scene is also surprising and tragic. More deaths and more storylines ready to be created next season. Although it's not a grandiose ending, it's still a promising one. So overall, I actually do kind of enjoy this season of Walking Dead. It has a very interesting premise that could go either extremely boring or really creative and interesting. It depends on how the writer uses the premise to expand the storylines, usually. And I also like how quick-paced the first season is. Every episode is different, from Morgan's place, to the building, to the Atlanta camp, to the CDC. There's not many boring scenes other than the first half of Vatos. And the show is good at bringing some despair, dread, and hopelessness, and then adding some hope back into the story for an emotional ride. None of the acting performances here are super outstanding though, but Andrew Lincoln is amazing as Rick Grimes, especially with the Southern American accent. Carl! Although there are tons of cliche moments that feels cool at first but turns stale soon, and the story isn't that groundbreaking or anything, the whole season feels satisfying and promising. The worst is episode 5, Wildfire, and the best is episode 1, Days Gone By. I'm saying The Walking Dead season 1 is pretty cool, and I'm giving it a 9 to an 8 out of 10. So, have you watched The Walking Dead season 1? From 1 to 10, how much would you rate it? Like if you like it, and subscribe if you want more.